right, welcome to Split the Defense Hockey Podcast. Coming to you live on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And broadcasting Monday's live episode every Tuesday right here from the Chumleys Kingston Tower of Power on Amherst Island Radio, 101.3 FM, CJAI, and CJAI.CA. All episodes can be found after recording on our YouTube channel at Split the Defense. To find us online, just search for Split the Defense on most social apps or at STDP Hockey on X, formerly known as Twitter. I'm Jordan Webster, alongside my co-host, Ted Evans, who runs production for all these shows and creates all that music you hear during Split the Defense Hockey Podcast.
Yes.
So, before we get into the show,
Okay.
PSA.
Yep.
The Wasps are out of heavy, man.
Really?
I got stung today, and there was like 15 of them around me, like I swear to God, that I killed. And I had to have encountered 30. And I sat on one when I got to the work van today, and it stung me right in the back. Terrible, horrible feeling. Those guys are just out in full force and crazy.
Oh, wow.
Be careful, people.
I guess so, yeah. Oh, my God. Okay. Well, watch out for the wasps.
Oh, it's terrible. All right,
get
I'm
stung.
fine. Thanks for asking.
You're good. Yeah, oh, well,
Yep.
Okay. You're here. I figured as much. You're here.
So, let's start off with the news that everybody's talking about.
Sure.
The Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah.
Mike Babcock resigns as head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the club names Pascal Vincent head coach.
That's right.
Oof. So the Blue Jackets officially hired Babcock on July 1st after his contract with the Maple Leafs had expired, because they weren't even allowed to talk to him before that, but apparently they did because he had a job like the day that he was allowed to. So it's funny how that works, huh?
Yeah.
Anyways, when he left Toronto, there was 100% questions about his conduct with the players and his the way that he acted, he conducted himself. Yeah, the way that he treated people, young people especially.
Yeah, it's not new, right? This isn't new for Babcock.
And so we wondered ever if he was going to coach in the NHL again. So he gets this job with the Blue Jackets. And then last week, the Blue Jackets, Babcock and Jenner released a joint statement because it comes out that he's asking players to play pictures off their phone, and then he learns how to use AirPlay and posts them up to his TV in his office, okay? So they released a statement saying, this was all blown out of proportion. And, even in several interviews in the offseason, he addressed his past and told NHL.com even that he expected players to help hold him accountable.
Yeah.
So he was going to be open, and if they didn't like it, they could tell him, and he'd be okay with that. But earlier in the week, Paul Beeson out of the Spit and Chicklets podcast told a story of Babcock asking Boone Jenner to see photos of his phone to see what type of person you are. And you just have to wonder how far down the line it went and who wasn't okay with it and they had to do it anyways. And what kind of a person does that?
Yeah.
So we weren't the only people questioning it, right, Ted?
No, not at all. I think we had a lot of people chiming in on this one.
Everybody all over the internet was all over this, and even so much so that Babcock was investigated by the NHL and the CJAI.CA following claims that he asked to go through players' phones for pictures. So
that's right.
This is a tweet here that JFresh tweeted, and this was on September the 12th. So it is like, what is it? This is the 18th today that we're recording. It's the 19th here on Amherst Island Radio. So think about how crazy this is that he put this on the 12th. He says, kind of seems like the story here. Oh, well, the first, it's a Jack Hunt tweet about his experience having the same experience. Jack Hunt is a hockey coach, and he worked with the Leafs and the Marlies. And so he would have worked under Babs. He said it happened, and I didn't worry about it, and everything was cool. He said that Babs showed us a pic of his pickleball court, and I just showed him a pic of my family. Like, it was all cool. But JFresh says it kind of seems like the story here might be Babs just wanted to see your family photos, but somebody taught him how to use AirPlay this summer, and maybe he didn't realize some people wouldn't want their photos on the folder broadcast of the coach's office TV.
Yeah.
Then he says either that or he grabbed the players' phones and swiped through their photos and scrolled through their DMs and went on their Snapchat.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the two. The funny thing was, he posted today, it was, I can't believe it was the second one. Like, obviously, stuff was going down. Investigations went down, and I have a blurb from Sportsnet here. I don't even know who wrote it, but
I
it
got
does
this.
say,
Yep.
according to multiple sources, one of the most serious concerns was a meeting that occurred away from team facilities that included several minutes of looking through a phone. That was beyond the scope of what was initially understood to have occurred. That's from Sportsnet. That's what I got when it came out. So,
multiple sources.
That's even crazier. Several minutes of looking through somebody's phone. And that made them uncomfortable. No doubt. Absolutely no doubt.
That's like being grilled.
So, I can't believe that it went on this long. But, I guess it really wasn't. It was a good 72 hours or week even that it went over. But I would think the day that all this went down, he should have been gone. Like, it should have been, if somebody complained, it should have just been gone. But now he's resigned. He didn't get fired.
Yeah.
Right?
Nope.
So, like, I'm sure there was a discussion between that, and he quit. So I don't think they owe him any money now. Like,
oh, really? Is that how that goes
down?
If
he gets fired, if he gets fired, he gets paid out. He's a coach no matter what. There's no buyout. There's nothing like that.
But if he steps away, it's like a mutual agreement, like this contract
to terminate
is
the contract.
Null and void, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think they have to pay him anymore. I think he just stepped away from the job. And I wonder if that's in hopes to coach in the NHL again.
I know,
No chance he's going to. So he released a statement.
I don't think
he released a statement, and it says, upon reflection, it has become clear that continuing as the head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets was going to be too much of a distraction. Well, I'm disappointed to have not had the opportunity to continue the work we've begun. I know it's in the best interest of the organization for me to step away at this time. I wish everyone in the organization well in the upcoming season. Now, that's what everybody says when they don't want to say that I made mistakes. They say I was too much. I just don't want to be a distraction.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
There'll be too much media attention, and I'm just taking the high road, stepping away, wish them the best. Yeah. Media-ing again. I feel this media thing again.
Yeah, no, he didn't write that, right?
No,
he didn't write that alone.
That's PR, like headquarters. Yeah, that's passed down and written and crafted.
Absolutely. Somebody that was a PR staff wrote that for him, and he just posted it or even just said it maybe somebody told him to say this, and he just went on and said something like that. And to finish it all off, and I guess not really finish it all off, there's a little bit more to the story, but the best thing about it, I guess, for Bissonnette, he had some final words. So he says, he doubles down on the We're a Players podcast. If you F with the players, your day will come.
Yep. Exactly.
And you know what? Absolutely, his day came. Sandpaper finish. It was tough for Babcock. He put himself in the position, though. You can't really feel bad for a guy that does stupid things.
Yeah, exactly. It's consequences. That's what happens.
I mean, like over and over, not a stupid thing, stupid things. Like, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them.
Yeah, exactly. That's
right.
That's right.
So NHLPA's Marty Walsh on the resignation of Mike Babcock. He says, our players deserve to be treated with respect in the workplace. Unfortunately, that was not the case in Columbus. The club's decision to move forward with a new head coach is the appropriate course of action. So, who coaches the team now? Who coaches the Blue Jackets? It's Pascal Vincent.
Yeah.
Never heard of that guy before, but he's been an assistant. This guy's been around.
I was going to say, he must have been the assistant or something, right? Yeah.
He was a head coach in the AHL. So,
okay.
They elected to hire associate coach at the time. He's the associate coach to Babcock, not even the assistant. And his name is Pascal Vincent. And in the end, it was an easy decision to make since he was there and he was already familiar with the players and the systems. He was also a candidate for the job before Babcock was hired. So they thought about maybe this guy could do the job, and then they got Babcock, more tenured guy, and he did the job,
Stuff went
kind
down.
of, except for it was like the summertime. Like he literally didn't even get into the season. He literally didn't even get
Yeah.
into training camps,
No, nothing.
and he's done. So, anyways, previously Pascal was an assistant in Winnipeg for the Jets and a
Okay.
head coach for their AHL affiliate, the Manitoba Moose, where he missed the playoffs in 3 out of 5 seasons. And one of those seasons was the 1920 campaign where there was no playoffs.
Oh,
So that's not great.
no, not ideal. Not good numbers.
No. Before joining the Blue Jackets as an assistant in the 21-22 season, and then he's been with the Blue Jackets since 21-22, and we all know what that's been like.
Yeah. Oy.
So, good luck, Columbus. Maybe you'll catch fire. Maybe there'll be some fire burning in the bellies of these guys after all this happened. Maybe it destroys the room and they have another really bad year. We'll see.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. So this is interesting. September 17th. September
Okay.
17th, Austin Matthews turns 26. Also, Alex Ovechkin turns 38.
Oh, wow.
That's a goal scorer's birthday.
That's definitely, yeah. September 17th, you got to watch for people born on that date, apparently.
So
Goal
you got to
scorers.
try and time that out so your kid can, right? if you're trying to have kids out there, guys, you got to do it like 9 months. So that'd be like January, like 17th ish, like middle of January, beginning of January, I guess, because you need a couple weeks, like
Yeah.
somewhere beginning of January, guys, and then you're gonna have a goal scorer.
Yeah. 17th comes around. I mean, start going. Get the kid out here, and he'll be a goal scorer. That's so funny. Both of those goal scorers born on the 17th.
I'd like to note that Gretzky's birthday is on January 26th.
Okay.
So that does not really
Right.
the greatest goal scorer ever.
Also, though, to counteract that a little bit, you know that stat. You may have heard this, maybe not. If every goal that Gretzky scored was taken away, he would still lead the most points of any NHL player of all time, even with all of his
that's
assists.
so crazy.
Isn't that
That
nuts?
is nuts. So
That's crazy. I know. It seems
disgusting.
fake. It seems fake.
I know, and I think I've done it, and it's like I've watched, and it's ridiculous. Like, yes, he still
It's true.
would by
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
unreal.
oh my god. Wow, Gretzky.
Yeah.
So, anyways, happy birthday, Matthews and Ovechkin, and also Sheldon Keefe has a birthday on September 17th. So I don't know. He's
Wow.
probably a goal scorer too. Coach Sheldon
Might
Keefe.
have been. Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
Coaches, goal scorers. Yeah, sure. Good for him. Yeah. Nice.
Nice. So, big fan of the game. Love players from across the league. Don't always know how to pronounce their name. And just realized that when this next candidate came up.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
Minnesota Wild news. They've signed
Right.
CJAI.CA.
Sure.
Is that something like that? To CJAI.CA, yeah. To a 1-year, 2-way contract. So I remember when he played with Edmonton, and you always watch the Leafs games on Saturdays, and then you
Yes.
stay up late, and then there's always the other game after, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the times I'd hang around and watch the other game too.
Yeah, check out some
not the
McDavid
whole
action.
thing because I usually fell asleep, or yeah. Anyways, so I would watch Oilers play, and Jujhar Khaira, he plays really hard. He skates really hard. He's a north-south guy, and he's fun to watch. I went to look his stats. I was like, oh, this guy's good. He's going to be like a half a point per game player. He's not. He's not great. He played 6 seasons with Edmonton, and the last 2 with Chicago, though. So he's been in the league for 8 years.
Yeah.
And what I have here is he plays hard, hounds the puck, but his stats are severely underwhelming. He's got 11 goals, 10 assists, and 69 games played. Best year in 17-18. So that was his best year. He played 69 games and he
Nice.
scored 11 goals, 10 assists, 21 points. That's his best year. But he's a good player. He's fun to watch. He's one of those players you don't realize that he's not making an impact on the score sheet because he definitely makes an impact on other places in the ice. And I'm
Well,
not even
yeah.
sure how great defensively he is, like statistically or whatever. But
Right.
you just see the players who go at it and go into it, right?
I know. Those
You do.
players do make themselves evident. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You just hear the announcer saying their name a bunch or whatever it is. Yeah, getting in those areas and doing the thing. Yeah, we love to see it.
Yes. So former Leaf Nick Ritchie Officially
Okay.
signed a professional tryout with the St. Louis Blues.
Ah,
And
nice.
if we'll remember back, Richie was drafted 10th overall, 2014, the same year William Nylander was drafted. And I believe William Nylander was taken 7th,
Okay.
something like that. And so everybody, I guess it was Nick Kiprios, wanted to trade Nylander for Richie and Montour at one point.
Wow.
Do you remember that on Sportsnet? No, we
I
should trade
know.
William Nylander for Nick Ritchie and Brandon Montour to
Oh.
Anaheim when they were in Anaheim.
Oh,
Because he
jeez.
thought Nick Ritchie was going to be better than William Nylander. That
Thankfully,
really
they
didn't
didn't
pan
do
out.
that.
Yeah, that didn't.
Jeez.
No, they had Nick Ritchie. They got
Yeah,
rid of
like
him. They
he's
traded
been.
him for
Yeah.
Ilya Labushkin.
Oy, yeah. Like so. Yeah, the fact that Nylander's name was even in talks with
Right.
that. Thankfully, that did not happen.
So what happened is he was drafted 10th overall by Anaheim. He was traded to Boston. He didn't get qualify on his qualifying offer when he was an RFA. Then he signed with the Leafs for 2 years, and then he played so poorly that he played 2 games in the AHL in the Marlies before he was traded to the Coyotes midseason for Ilya Labushkin.
Right.
Then he finished out last year with the Coyotes, but he was traded midseason to the Flames for, interesting note, his brother.
Oh yeah, that was a funny trade. I liked that
Yeah, you
one.
remember
Richie
that?
for Richie.
Yeah, so Nick Ritchie for Brett Ritchie. So Brett Ritchie went to Arizona. You think they just apartment swapped?
And they had to have, right? I mean,
Yeah, just
wouldn't
let
that
me.
be
I'll
the
take your
obvious
place. You'll
thing?
take mine. It's like, yeah. Why
Yeah.
would we even? Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
just.
let's not make this. Yeah, we're bro. I got you, bro. You got me. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's exactly
absolutely.
for sure.
What size are your waist? What size is your waist again? I'm just gonna leave my pants here. You leave
Yeah, could
yours. Like,
yeah. Do you want to
dude,
just leave the dresser in the closet?
we're
Yeah, leave
brothers.
the closet, leave the dresser. We'll just
Yeah.
switch.
Heck.
Yep.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Swap. I can buy new clothes. Oh. Anyways, I think that's how that would happen. And it'd be great. You know where to go to visit your brother when you're in town.
That's right. No
You'd never have
directions
to worry
needed.
about that because it was your old house. So it's a little more St. Louis Blues news. They are to name a new captain. The announcement is expected Tuesday morning. So for the Amherst Island listeners, that will have been this morning at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. If you're interested, go check out the St. Louis Blues and who they named their new captain. Their old captain was Ryan O'Reilly, who they traded away to the Toronto Maple Leafs at the trade deadline, or just before the trade deadline this spring that just passed.
Yeah.
And he became a UFA, an unrestricted free agent, this summer, and he signed a deal in Nashville for like 4 years by 4.5 or something like that.
Yeah.
So he's not back in St. Louis, so they're looking for a new captain. So Ted, who do you think they name as captain?
Gee, this is a tough one for me because I really dislike St. Louis as a team.
It should be
So
easy
I'm
then.
why?
Well, because you would know them.
Well, I do and I don't because I kind of have every time like St. Louis news comes up, I'm just like like whatever. I don't really check in on it. I'm not interested unless it's like
It's one of those
Binghamton or
teams, yeah.
getting chirped or something.
I
I
feel
don't know
that.
who's a guy. There are players, of course, on their team that I like. It's just how it is when you don't like a certain team. Who's a guy that's been around? Fast guy, Jordan Kyrou. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought so, but then he's kind of equal to Robert Thomas, so that's not going to happen. They have matching contracts as well.
Okay. Who are you thinking?
I'm thinking it's either going to be Braden Shen
Oh, that's a
or
good one.
Colton Parayko.
Parayko's name came up in my mind too, and I thought,
Yeah,
maybe he's
he's
one
a
of those
little older.
guys
He's
who's
got a big
vocal in
long
the room.
contract, and he'll be
And
there for a while, right?
yeah,
He's already got a long contract, so there's no messing around with that. He's there for probably, I think, 7 more years after this. So
wow, yeah, he might be a name to look at for the captaincy.
I would think so. So moving on, Josh Bailey. This is crazy. Josh Bailey, who's a great player, and he's only 33 years old, signs a professional tryout with the Ottawa Senators. Great, my life. The 33-year-old was drafted 9th overall by the New York Islanders in 2008 and has played his entire career of 1,057 games in Long Island. So good for
Wow,
Josh Bailey.
yeah, cool. He's got a
Now
wicked
he's
slap shot, doesn't he? Wasn't that his thing when he was like young and being drafted?
I can't
The
even
big
remember. I
slapper.
just remember that he played on the Senators and he scored. Or sorry, he played
The
on the Islanders
Islanders.
and he scored, and nobody
Yeah.
scored on the Islanders. So he's got 184 goals and 396 assists in his career for a .54 career points per game. So he's a
Yeah.
guy. He's
Yeah,
definitely a
that's
guy that plays in the league. Um,
solid.
he's a great ad, and if he performs, which he most likely will, he's probably going to end up in the top 6. And if not, they're going to have a lethal top 9.
True. Yeah, have some
Yeah.
real depth.
Senators are looking scarier and scarier every day.
It's true. They're making good signings, good
Yeah.
pickups. They've
I
made a
hate to say
few
it,
not
but
great moves, but the stuff they did in the otherwise and with that space and with the stuff they came up with, they are looking scary. You are correct.
yeah, once they're starting to line up, it's I'd say the Senators are looking pretty great.
Yeah.
So we have just a couple more things to go through here. We're going to talk about the Leafs in Traverse City, and then we're going to hit break. And right after the break, we have a
Yes.
special guest. Who do we have, Ted?
We've got Jim Barber on the show, and yeah, that's going to be exciting. I've got a big intro for Jim right before he gets on here, but this guy knows his hockey. I'm telling you, he covered OHL and junior hockey, every level of junior hockey for over 20 years. So, and he's talked to tons of ex NHLers. We'll get into it. We're going to have a great chat with Jim after the break. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So before we get to break, the Leafs were in the prospect tournament in Traverse City, and
Yes.
they had some luck and some not. But the leaders of the points were people you would expect and people that I would just like to know that I am super excited about. Somebody
Sweet.
named Brandon Lisowski. And
I
I
don't know if I've heard
never
that
thought
name.
anything about him, but I watched him in this prospect tournament. The guy, he is a runner and gunner. Like he goes, skates up. He's a winger, I believe, or he could even be a center. I think he's a center because he skates up and he's in the middle of the ice and they snipe him the puck in the middle and he just rushes in at the goalie. And he did that 2
Nice.
or 3 times when I was watching, and just in the one period. Sorry, when I was thinking about it, and that's what really caught my eye. And he ended up leading the Maple Leafs and with 4 goals out of the team. So the
Awesome.
assists leaders were Easton Cowan, the first round draft pick from the
Yep.
Leafs this year,
Good
Fraser
stuff.
Minton, the second round draft pick from the Leafs last year, and then Ryan Verberg, which I think he was like a 7th round pick or a 6th round pick a few years ago. Points overall leaders was Easton Cowan. Um,
Nice.
and Matthew Nyes in the prospect tournament looked
Yeah.
absolutely sick. They benched him for the 3rd game because they didn't need him to play. I think they probably just wanted
Sure.
to see another guy in his place instead.
Yep.
But he looked absolutely sick.
And I mean,
Um,
he's going to be on the club anyways. We know this. So, yeah, let's
yeah, I think
see
so.
some other guys in the
In 2
prospect tournament.
games, he had 3 assists, 3 points, and he was a +3. So he was first in the tournament. In those first 2 games, he was first in the tournament in all 3 in those first 2 categories, and second in the tournament for the plus minus behind his own teammate.
Ha,
He
that's
had 3
wicked.
shots and 2 penalty minutes, which is even better.
Yeah.
And in the first game, he took a whack on the wrist, and I was a little worried about that. And when he didn't play the 3rd game, there's a whole bunch of speculation that he might have hurt his wrist, but it looks like he's going to be fine. They
Okay.
just didn't want to play him just because obviously, like he came
Yeah.
back for the
Don't
second
risk
game and
it.
he just rocked, right? So it's fine. But so they interviewed him, and he said he wants to play with the big players. I want to play with the big club, and I'm just going to work my best to play there. So
Nice.
he doesn't want to go and play in the AHL. He's hungry for the
No,
NHL, and I think he's got a great chance at it.
I think so.
Tavares called him a huge home run for us, and his potential is through the roof, is what he said.
That's awesome coming from the captain.
Absolutely. Notably, Connor Bedard,
Yeah.
he scored a hattie,
A Hattie.
and we are just about to head to break, and we will take you out with a Connor Bedard highlight.
Sure. Let's take a look at that.
So he and Adam Fantilli actually both scored hat tricks, but this guy's just unbelievable. Like, oh yeah, look at that. It's just delightful. Look at that. Pull, toe drag, snap. Oh, that's just disgusting. Watch this. Dangles around everybody. Where did that even go? They feed him up. Oh, Beautiful music too.
I like it.
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, so
Nicely
he was
done.
fantastic in that tournament, and he looks good while he does it. One more thing we're going to show before we break out is pull up that picture that I have of Bedard's angle on his shot, because where 90%
Yes.
of NHLers would shoot is in the first one, and
Yeah.
where Bedard releases the shot is where the other 10% elite NHLers shoot from, like Austin Matthews. And he's the one that I can think that curl interacts really very well. Bedard's shot is very similar, and it is very, very nice.
I think I missed that one. That is my bad.
That's okay.
Yeah. We will
So
we'll come back after break.
after break, we've got Jim Barber. We will catch you all in 4 minutes.
Woo!
Split the defense.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm back. Our guest Jim Barber is going to be joining us any second now. It's going to be a lot of fun, and Jordan will be back shortly as well. Here we are, and like I said, Jim will be with us any second here, and then we'll be chatting, we'll be hanging out. It'll be a lot of fun. I got to get my questions ready and stuff. There's Jordan coming back. We're still live right now on Twitch and YouTube. Jim will be joining us any second. And there he is. Hey, Jim.
How's it going? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you very much.
You. Welcome,
Yeah.
welcome.
You guys look great, all professional and everything. I'm sitting here in my living room with my phone.
No, it looks good. It fits the vibe, honestly. It's
perfect.
I do have the cooler hockey sweater on.
That is much cooler, I gotta say.
And I'm right in front of my my wall of hockey books.
Oh, that's cool.
Very cool.
All the way up to the top and all the way to the bottom.
Wow.
And that's not all of them.
That's not it, eh? Oh
no,
my God.
I've still got another box in my bedroom. So
very nice. We're going to.
That's amazing.
That is. I've got some intro music here, and then I'll read a little intro, and then we'll get right into it.
Okie doke.
Here we are.
All right, and we're back here on Split the Defense Hockey Podcast, broadcasting from the Chumley's Kingston Tower of Power on Amherst Island Radio 101.3 FM, CJAI, and CJAI.CA. Today, we have a special guest.
Yes, that is right. Our guest today, someone I would refer to as a legitimate hockey expert. Jim Barber was a newspaper and magazine journalist for 21 years, covering all levels of junior hockey from Junior C to Tier 2 Junior A. Jim also covered the OHL for teams like Newmarket, Peterborough, and Barrie. Now, this is crazy, but Jim has interviewed more than 600 ex-NHLers, spanning from guys who played in the 1940s all the way through the 90s, like when we were born. And we're talking numerous Hall of Famers, too. Jim interviewed every living member of Team Canada 72, and Jordan, you'll love this, almost every living member of the last Leafs team to win the Cup. And Jim has also written 6 hockey books. I know, it's great, right? The first one being about hockey history in the Collingwood area, which we'll get into as well. He's done both cable TV, radio play-by-play, as well as color commentary for junior hockey. Jim, we're so excited to have you here on Split the Defense. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. I must clarify that all of that stuff happened a long time ago.
Yes.
But
here's Jim.
No, it's interesting because,
yes,
of course,
we are happy to have you.
Of course, I met Ted I know through music circles, and then I found out he's got this whole hockey thing going. And there's a whole lot of people in this area who don't know about. They know, oh, Jim's a guy. He writes about music. He goes to shows. Blah blah blah. They don't know about this hockey stuff, and that was as big a part of my life for a long time as covering music was. And I was just as passionate about writing about it, especially when you get a chance to interview some of the absolute legends of the game. How can you not get excited about that? So
Yeah, no kidding. Um, we'll chat about some of that. The Leafs team. We'll get into NHL stuff, but I want to start maybe closer to home, where a lot of NHLers' careers really start to blossom in junior hockey. So you've covered all levels of junior hockey, and probably could tell us a million stories. But I wanted to know when it was you first got your start in the sports media world, and how did that career path, really kick off?
well, I went to school in Centennial College in Toronto for journalism, and I had an opportunity to write for a little sports magazine that was just kind of one you picked up, and it was just getting started in Toronto. It only lasted a few issues, but it gave me the opportunity to go to Toronto Maple Leaf practices and interview players. Um, I also then, while I was still in journalism school, I got a job working for my hometown newspaper, which was in Newmarket. At the time, Newmarket had an OHL team, the Newmarket Royals, formerly the Cornwall Royals. So
That's exciting.
my first year in the newspaper business, I covered the OHL. And every place I went after that throughout Ontario, I would cover whatever the local junior hockey program was. Junior B, Junior C. Collingwood was tier 2, but I also worked in Barrie at the same time, so I covered the Barrie Colts. In Peterborough, I covered the Petes, but I also covered the Lakefield Junior C team as well. So it just was I would carve out as well as doing all the other stuff you do at a small newspaper, covering the courts, covering council. I would always say, look, can I also write about hockey? And they always said yes. So it was always incorporated as part of my job. And everywhere I went, I would cover, as well as everything else, I would cover the hockey scene as well.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. So, of all the people you've interviewed, which was, you said, over 600, which was your favorite interview ever? And did you ever interview where you said, holy crap, I can't believe I just interviewed that guy right after you finished the interview?
Uh, for the second part of that question, many times even after I've been doing it for 10 or 12 years, um, it's pretty hard to not think that spending 45 minutes across the table from Gordie Howe is not the highlight. Like, how do you beat that? And I really, off the top of my head, I can't. I also sat across the table and interviewed Rocket Richard. And so those two are pretty, I can't really think off the top of my head of anything better than that. And there were so many times where I couldn't believe it. I'd get off the phone and the adrenaline I'd be totally cool during the interview. But as soon as I got off the phone, the interview or the adrenaline started pumping. Yeah. So almost every time.
Yeah, I'd have a hard time not kind of, being the fan, the overexcited fan sometimes. But that's so awesome. Obviously, you get used to it, but you never lose that excitement of I just talked to certain guys. That's so cool to hear. Um, and then covering, I mean, for over 20 years, you must have crossed paths with a ton of players who went on to play in the NHL from junior. Were there any you interviewed like a few times throughout their careers, kind of maybe got to know or, just kind of saw along the way?
I covered the Barrie Colts for a number of years. The current coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I interviewed him many times because he was the captain of the Barrie Colts, and I covered their trip to the Memorial Cup where they made it to the finals but lost. And so I interviewed Sheldon Keefe many times.
Oh,
That's cool.
wow.
back in the day.
Yeah. That's a cool one for sure. And then it's someone we talk about on the show quite a bit, obviously.
Yeah.
So definitely cool to hear. Yeah, seeing him through different levels of the game. And then also that kind of ties in the books you wrote about hockey. There's some really cool players you mentioned. There's the great goaltenders, stars of hockey's golden age, great defensemen, stars of hockey's golden age, great hockey centermen of today, Toronto Maple Leafs, stories of Canada's legendary team, Montreal Canadiens, thrilling stories from Canada's famous hockey franchise, and hockey heroes of the Georgian Triangle, looking back. And that one was your first hockey book. And I'll give our listeners a quick synopsis. This is from the book. Hockey Heroes of the Georgian Triangle looks back at 5 of the best players and most intriguing characters to have played Canada's favorite game. The stories of Reg Noble, Jack Portland, Ernie Fryer, Donnie Westbrook, and Daryl Sly explore not only their skills on the ice, but also their private lives and distinct personalities. It was their good fortune to grow up in the Collingwood, Clearview Township, and Wasaga Beach part of Ontario. This region, once best known for its shipbuilding, was also a hotbed of hockey in the early years of the 20th century and has produced many top amateur teams and professional players, including one Hockey Hall of Famer. So this seems like a really cool look into an awesome corner of the hockey world, some real interesting history of the game. What kind of inspired you to take these stories from that specific area, those specific guys, and go and make a book out of that?
I started writing. There was a gentleman who was a legendary sports journalist in that area named Scotty Carmichael. And he helped start the Collingwood Sports Hall of Fame. And in 1984, wrote a book that had short little profiles of every athlete that had been that was in the Hall of Fame. And from the moment I arrived to work there in the mid 90s, I was fascinated by the history of that community and the hockey history of that community. And realized that they have had some NHL players. They've had Reg Noble goes on to the Hockey Hall of Fame. They've had players make the NHL. Jason Arnott grew up just down the road in Wasaga Beach, brought the Stanley Cup there in 2000. And I started then doing some research, and they started as a series of lengthy articles in the paper. I was the editor of the paper, so I got to decide what to write and how much space I was going to give it. And I was getting such positive feedback, and people kept saying, "Well, why don't you write a book?" And so I collected 5 of these that I thought were the most intriguing and approached this a little publisher and who specialized in local history and said, "Look, I've basically got the book almost written. Will you publish it?" And they said, "Sure." So it was my way of sort of updating the work, part of the work of what Scotty Carmichael did. Obviously, I had hoped that it would lead to more, but then, I got into working with another publisher. But that's how it started. It just started out as people responding to the articles that I was running in the paper, and it turned into a book.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. Yeah, you just we're doing just getting your hockey stories in with the news stuff, and went with the positive feedback and went to the publisher. I love that. And of course, now that we're talking a little bit more NHL, we've talked about some of the NHLers you've interviewed, Hall of Famers. The entire Team Canada 72, which alone is amazing. And another team that I'm sure Jordan has a few questions about.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so you interviewed every living member. You said every member of the last team to win the Stanley Cup in 1967. So that's 56 years ago. We've been waiting, wishing, and hoping for this to happen again. I always say that I could grow up and have all my family and win the lottery and have everything in the whole entire world, but if the Leafs didn't win a cup in my lifetime, there'd still be a little piece missing before I go. You probably didn't know then that we'd be waiting for a cup that long ago, right? I bet you didn't.
Well,
And
Who knows?
who were the
50,
best
I'm
interviews on
54.
that team? Who was the funniest? Who was the kindest to interview? And was there anybody that wouldn't?
No, because most of them, it was in conjunction with, they were coming to wherever I was working to do like a signing or to make a special appearance. So it was, the hook was that they were coming and I was doing it to drum up an audience in advance of their visit, or they were part of an old timers hockey tour or something like that. And so for the most part, most of these people were willing to talk. Every living member that of the at the time. So this is 90s into the year into the 2000s. Anybody who was alive, and sometimes I would be doing another article on, say, like a special anniversary of that occasion, and I would approach someone maybe who I hadn't interviewed and said, "Look, I'm putting together a piece on the anniversary," even though I was uh, a journalist from Barrie. Once the internet came along, I knew that my articles would start to get more traction outside of the Barrie market. But I would always interview somebody local and put a local spin on it, as well as interviewing someone from the team who maybe I hadn't talked to. My favorite player as a little kid growing up was Dave Keon. So when I got to interview him in 1998, Cloud Nine, and that one was in person as well. Um, the kindest, the most humble, and just the most genuine guy is Johnny Bauer. Everybody loves Johnny Bauer, and after you spend 30 seconds with him, you know why. Just a genuine, nice gentleman. A
Jeez.
genuine, nice gentleman. Funniest one. I mean, these are obvious to anybody from who knows that era, but Eddie Shack. Eddie Shack was the character that everybody thought he was. The comedian was his nickname, and he was like that in real life. But I always found it interesting to interview the lesser known players. So if I'm working in a town, every time I go visit a town, I'd find out who the local hockey player was, the name of who was the guy that claimed to fame from that town, and and go talk to them, and then eventually I would maybe interview them. But I was living in places like Kirkland Lake in Northern Ontario, and that town has an amazing legacy of hockey. But to talk to somebody like Larry Hillman, Larry Hillman played 20 years in the NHL, and then he got but he was a journeyman defenseman. But if you think about the fact that there were only 6 teams and the fact that he played 15, 18 years in the NHL, he is one of, if not the first player to ever win Stanley Cups on 3 different teams. But that's not a well-known fact because he wasn't well known. He was a stay-at-home defenseman, strong and tough, but he wasn't flashy. But he never was out of a job. Once in a while, he gets sent down to the minors. So talking to guys like that, or Bill White, a very quiet defenseman who played for Chicago, but he was a stalwart on the Team Canada
Wow.
72. I would find those guys to be, and that's one of the things I love so much about my first book was I was interviewing people that weren't very well known and even had been kind of forgotten within their own home areas, but their stories were so fascinating and so heartwarming. And everybody knows about Gordie Howe and Wayne Gretzky and that, but some of these guys had even more interesting stories.
To have been around that must have been incredible. I can't imagine it because again, talking specifically Leafs. We don't know about a team that's done that in our lifetime. So it's very cool to see. And like you said, I mean, you're 54, so it technically wasn't in your lifetime either. But it has been a while since they've done that. But that's really cool to hear about and the 72 stuff. We also wanted to talk about that jersey you're wearing. Um, what's that jersey?
This is the Cleveland Barons. The Cleveland Barons were in the NHL from 19 through 76, 77, 77, 78. They were one of the original expansion teams in 1967 when the league went from 6 to 12 teams. But they started off as the Oakland, California Golden Seals. And after a few years, the team was struggling. Cool unis, though. Um, and they moved to Cleveland for a couple of years. Cleveland was a hotbed of minor hockey, and actually, the Leafs had a farm team there for many years. But it was, again, the franchise was awful, and they were losing money. So after the 1977-78 season, the Cleveland Barons actually merged with the Minnesota North Stars. So that franchise was folded into the Minnesota North Stars franchise. And then eventually the Minnesota North Stars moved to Dallas. And then a few years later, Minnesota gets the Wild. But I have had a fascination from when I was a little kid collecting the hockey cards, because I think that's one of my favorite logos in unis. And I would get in the hockey cards as a 6, 7 year old. And I even remember the old Seals hockey cards. And I've always had a fascination with defunct franchises that were in the NHL and didn't last, or that moved on to other cities. And so I also had a huge fascination with the WHA, because I remember the WHA. I actually went to a WHA game when I was 7 years old. And so I've been fascinated with a lot of that, sort of the minutia of, and following the franchises and seeing where they go. You know, how the Kansas City Scouts come into the league in like 1973. Then they moved to the Colorado, become the Colorado Rockies. And in 1981, they moved to New Jersey, become the Devils. Absolutely fascinating. Hamilton had a team in the NHL for 5 years. St. Louis had a team in the NHL before they had the Blues. Pittsburgh and Philadelphia had teams in the NHL before the Penguins and the Flyers. So I've been fascinated with that early part of the NHL and these defunct franchises. It's just been a fascination for my whole life.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love that. One
It's like
I've
the
always,
Wild West back then. It was just
yeah,
franchises here and there and everywhere that just don't exist now, up and down, and the owners trying. It seems that's crazy.
yeah, I love those stories. Yeah, like one I follow a lot and look into is the Nordiques and possible, early Avs jerseys and possible Nordiques jerseys that never made it and stuff like that. Very interesting stuff. And yeah,
Well,
great jersey. Love that jersey.
All right, so we got a couple of minutes left. Jim, this has been fantastic. I'd like to thank you again. Jim Barber has been with us on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure. But before we let you go, I just wanted to ask you, what's your earliest childhood hockey memory?
it was at my grandparents' house. I grew up north of Toronto in Newmarket, in front of the TV on Saturday night with I'm sort of laying on my stomach with my hockey cards in front of me, and I'm playing the game along to the play-by-play of the Toronto Maple Leafs with my hockey cards on the floor. Every time I hear a guy's name, I move the card. And when they score, I mash all the cards together because all the guys came together. That's one of my early. I'm probably 4, 5, maybe. And of course, Davey Keon was one of those players.
I mean that is a really great picturing that with the cards and watching the game. Really cool.
Probably on a dirty, nasty old carpet, like all our grandparents had,
Oh no, no,
Yep,
laying on your belly.
no,
Yeah,
no.
that's
This
great,
so
was
Jim.
cool.
this was no. My grandmother was immaculate. This was I wasn't allowed to have any snacks on that carpet.
That's great. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes, it has. It's actually
We Yeah,
brought some
and
memories
we
back
really
that I
do
haven't had
again
in
want to thank you
a
for
while.
joining us today on Split the Defense. All this chatting has been fun. But yeah, really been a pleasure chatting with you, Jim.
Well,
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I
Appreciate you
appreciate
coming
it,
on.
guys. Thanks very much. And anytime you need a crusty old guy to tell some old stories, I'm available.
All right, we'll definitely have you back for sure. Absolutely.
Okay, guys, keep your stick on the ice.
See ya.
Thank you. Take care.
Oh, that was so good. So, Jim Barber, everybody, we just had on the show. and he had some amazing stories. So anybody who tuned in after the fact, you're lucky because you can come back to these anytime and just remember all those great things he told us. Lots of name drops, eh? Like,
Loved it.
he just
Yeah.
big timed us.
I know.
Absolutely. What a
What a
stud.
legend.
Absolute stud. Yeah. He's a great guy. And it sounds like he's got us a great past. I'm sure he's got a lot more great stories. And the next time we get him on, we'll have to get his takes on some of today, what's going on.
Yes, that is true. Yes, we had
Somebody who's been covering the game for so long and seen so much.
I know, right? We'll hear what he has to think about all this stuff going on in this crazy NHL we're looking at these days.
It's been crazy, and there's not even any hockey being played yet.
I know.
Isn't it nuts? Like, it's just going to get even more fun from here.
Yeah.
So
I know.
anyways, that is an absolute wrap on Split the Defense Hockey Podcast. Thanks to all our listeners on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and 101.3 Amherst Island Radio, CJAI and CJAI.CA. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back again on Amherst Island Radio next Tuesday, and we're back live Thursday on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Just search for Split the Defense. Thank you, and good day.
Have a good night. Split the defense.